Thanks so much. What a great turnout. Thanks so much for coming on a beautiful Indian summer evening. Enjoy the weather today because it's changing again. I think by Thursday you'll see what fall might look like, although we tend to have beautiful, beautiful, beautiful falls here in Michigan. My name is DiMarco. I'm Cranbrook's president. When those of you who are alums went to Cranbrook, they didn't have a president. They had a head of schools, head of science, head of the art academy, and they were independent institutions. Today, we are governed by a board of trustees who manage all of Cranbrook, and I work for those trustees. The trustees are the fiduciaries of Cranbrook, yet there's still our schools board of governors, academy board of governors, and science board of governors that manage the pedagogy of those organizations. I want to thank you. There's a few people in the room that I'd like to just, I could point out, the history of Cranbrook is right here in this room, by the way, but I could point out a number of you. But first, Charles Himmelhoff. Charles? So, class of 1938, 70 years on. 70 years on. Now I think Himmelhoff is a German name. Himmel meaning heaven, and Hock means high. It's not Himmelhoff. High heaven. There he is, right there. Thank you for being with us with your family tonight. Thank you so much. And so there's one other person that I'll mention, although I could mention a dozen of you, I think, just by looking around the room, and that's John Wirt. John grew up on this campus. His father was a Latin teacher here, and every time that we bump into each other, which is pretty numerous, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year at different events and different things, he tells me that faculty way and academy way needs to be cleaned up. That's where he grew up, and he's right. The faculty housing needs more improvement here. We're working our way in that direction. John and his sister have given back to Cranbrook in a scholarship for Cranbrook students here. And John, thank you to you and your family for your wonderful support of Cranbrook schools and your undying enthusiasm about what we can do here at Cranbrook in terms of fundraising. So thank you, John. Thank you, John. So as members of the Cranbrook and Kingswood classes of 1938 to 1968, your history and loyalty to the schools has stood the test of time. As a group, we represent the history and rich traditions of the schools. And the fact that you took time here with us tonight shows me how loyal you are and how eager you are to see the future of Cranbrook be successful. That is why it's great pleasure for me tonight to introduce to you the new head of schools, Aimeclaire Roche. Aimeclaire is right here. Aimeclaire. Now, Aimeclaire would be preferred to be called AC. I'm struggling with this, but it is AC, Aimeclaire, whatever you'd like. She's invited us to use AC as her nickname. AC came to Cranbrook schools from the Bishop Schools, a respected independent school in La Jolla, California, where she served as director of schools since 2009. So a little bit of history that's totally coincidental. Although I'm one of these people that believe that there are no coincidences in life, right? So the Bishop School in La Jolla was started by Ellen Scripps. And this would be Ellen Scripps Booth's aunt. All right, and she benefited as well from the newspaper business. I don't think she was ever married, and I think she moved to the West Coast to get away from the rest of the family, and decided to invest her money, much like George and Ellen did here, in education, in museums, in science. And there's a wonderful history in La Jolla about the Scripps family. And so if you visit La Jolla, there's the Scripps Hospital, there's the Bishop School, and there's so much more. And that was Ellen Scripps. Prior to the Bishop School, AC worked at a well-known secondary schools such as Groton School in Massachusetts and the boarding school she attended herself, Phillips Exeter, also in Massachusetts. Exeter ignited her passion for the classical studies, including Latin and ancient Greek, which she maintained throughout her higher education and teaching career. At Wellesley College, she spent 2 years tutoring fellow students in Greek and acting in both Greek and Latin dramas, before transferring to Harvard, where she continued to pursue her love of classical studies, acting in movie Latin dramas, and writing her honors thesis on the works of Homer and Theocritus. So if you don't know who Theocritus is, ask Aimeclaire tonight. Homer we know, Theo not so much. She graduated cum laude from Harvard. She also has a master's degree from Columbia University Teachers College. AC made the move to Michigan with her fiance, Nathan, who was installed as the assistant director of music at Christ Church, Cranbrook. There's much more I could share with you about Aimeclaire. The two of us are going to, after dinner, the two of us are going to sit down. I'll ask her a series of questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience in terms of you asking her questions. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to welcome Aimeclaire to this campus. This is a wonderful independent school. In my opinion, and I've mentioned this to many of you tonight, this is the biggest job on campus, being the director of schools. And we couldn't have picked a better director than AC. So thank you very much. A couple introductions first. And first I want to thank a few people that made this evening possible. Our Director of Alumni Operations, Susan Akins-Post. Susan, thank you so much. Believe it or not, this takes a lot of work, and this woman has been working on this tirelessly for a long, long time. Susan Strickland Muskovitz. Susan, stand up, please. The Director of Development of the Cranbrook Schools. Charlie Shaw. Charlie, where are you? Charlie, Director of Schools. And so a new face in the audience, Eileen Savage. Eileen, please stand up. Eileen is a new Director of Advancement for all time. All right, I want to thank that group. That group has been working very, very hard on advancement and development activities in Cranbrook for the last year or two, and this event, I think, has never been this successful. And I hope it's because all of you were so interested in meeting our new director of schools at Aimeclaire. So with that, I'm going to ask Aimeclaire some questions. Then I'm going to open it up to the audience, as long as you behave. And we'll try to have about a 40-minute Q&A session here. Okay. So, I have prepared questions, and let's start with those, please. So, Aimeclaire, tell us a little about yourself and your fiancé, Nathan. What do you like to do to relax and unwind? And how are you adjusting for life in Michigan?
Okay, here's the funny thing. I'm used to being the teacher, and so you can imagine how uncomfortable this is. As Dom said when he did that really lovely introduction, I am engaged, and Nathan Cast is my fiance, and he's working over at Cranbrook. It has been a really remarkable move for us. You talk to your friends in La Jolla, California, and they say, you're moving where? Michigan? And I think Dom emphasized how beautiful the fall is for my benefit, so that I don't have any regrets about such crazy ideas. But we're settling in really well. Nathan himself is a Latin teacher, and when the kids at Bishop's found out I was engaged and had met the only other living Latin teacher on the planet, they thought that was fabulous. And we've just had a super good time getting to know both this community and the Christchurch community. I have to say that between the two, there's enough to keep us busy 7 nights a week and 7 days a week. And so it's been a really great move. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so the move here was intentional to get closer to my family and to get back to my roots in this area. So we are both super excited about, as the fall unfolds, all that we'll get to do to get to explore this area and have a lot of fun.
So, off script, I had the opportunity when we were beginning to look at Aimeclaire as a potential candidate here, of watching her give a speech to the people at Bishop's. And she was talking about this friend that she had that she always sent Christmas gifts to her every year. And that the gift hadn't come in yet, and she had known this person for a very long time, and so she was a little worried that the gift wasn't going to come in. And so the holidays passed, and we were now into the after Christmas, before New Year's period of time, and suddenly the gift appeared because the person who had been her friend for so many years had decided that he did not want to be, and it wasn't a he at that point, the person did not want to be connected to the holiday season, but connected to Aimeclaire and the giving season. And that was her fiance, Nathan. So, and I asked Aimeclaire when we first met, in her first interview here, when I looked at this interview online, or this speech online, whether that, in fact, was Nathan Costa. And she said, yes, that was Nathan Costa. So how long have you known him?
Nathan and I have known each other for 18 years because we taught together at St. Andrew's School in Delaware. And we didn't start seeing each other until I moved on to Groton. And that went on for about 10 years, 12 years. And as I say to the kids when they sometimes are heartbroken, we had a few spectacular breakups in the course of those 12 years. But about 3 years ago, we decided to actually get serious about this endeavor and make a commitment, and our wedding is in January. So we are fast planning as the months first.
So you'll all have an opportunity to meet this great guy. I've had a chance to be with him socially a couple of times, and really think he's terrific, a great, sort of a great match with Aimeclaire, someone who will help support her here at Cranbrook. And that's a really important thing because this is a very big job. I've told many of you tonight, this is the biggest job on campus, and having a supporting spouse is really, really important. Okay, that was the easy question. So you have been an educator for more than 25 years. What is the source of your passion for education? What do you consider the highlights of your career thus far?
I have been really lucky. When you think about two things, both the educational opportunities that I was lucky enough to have as a student, as a young person, and the schools that I have been able to teach in and be a part of. I've been really fortunate because I've been at places like Cranbrook that have long histories, have a sense of strength about them, but most of all, get their fuel and their life energy every day from two people, and one is the students and one is the other teachers you get to live in these amazing places with. And as my advisees, I've got 8 advisees here. We're gathering today to get ready for the PSAT test, which is tomorrow. It's those moments with kids, whether they're in a classroom or whether they're on a field or on a stage or just passing each other in the hallway on dorm duty. When you have those moments to be with them, whether it's a high moment and they're joyous or there's a low moment and they're struggling to figure out what the next appropriate step is, you have the great privilege of being with them. And I'm sure you can think back to your time in school here, and I'll bet you there's a teacher who comes to mind who was with you in one of those moments. And so to be a part of that kind of legacy and a part of that life force that goes through these places and actually allows them to carry on and do good work and good business with kids is, I think, what gives me strength every day. And I have my good days and bad days too. Every now and again you pick up the phone and, a parent might not be happy about the Latin grade the child just got. And you have those moments where you have to realize that's an in-the-moment complaint or question. And it's the kids who are on deck with you in those places that are really where your attention needs to be. And so that's what continues to keep me in schools. I became a teacher because I loved Latin and I loved ancient Greek. And I loved the structure of that study and the way that study allowed you to process information. I actually have stayed in education because of the kids and because of my colleagues. And what has attracted me to Cranbrook actually is a move back to a residential school. St. Andrews was 100% residential. Groton was almost 90% residential. Bishops was a fully day school, and that was a great experience for me. But I missed the living, working, daily experience on campus. And so that's what's kept me in education as long as it has. And it's been a great privilege to enjoy that.
So, Aimeclaire and I talked about what should be her first year objectives. And someone at my table tonight asked me, well, what do you expect Aimeclaire to do her first year here at Cranbrook? And Aimeclaire had the perfect answer, and you can tell she's lived and worked in the schoolhouse her entire career. She said, the most important thing is for me to understand the faculty, understand the administrators, what they need, what they want, where they're headed, what direction they aspire to, and understand them so that when we finish this first year, we're all on the same page to move forward. And we are moving toward accreditation here in the next couple of years. And so there's an accreditation process in place coming up, which requires a new strategic look, a new mission statement, all the things that we do to reestablish what Cranbrook schools are all about. And I think that was the perfect answer in terms of what her first year objectives should be. Okay, so what drew you to this position at Cranbrook Schools?
Again, my friends from La Jolla would say, you're moving where? I've known about Cranbrook for a long time. When you spend your education and life on the eastern seaboard, you know the great schools that are there. And so Cranbrook was well known to me as a place that had great capacity. And Bishops is about half the size of Cranbrook Kingswood. It's 800 students, and it's 6th grade through 12th grade. And what was exciting for me about this opportunity was the idea of working with the full complement of young people, from the very youngest, and the Early Childhood Center gets 3-year-olds over at Brookside, all the way through 9th grade, to 12th grade, to be able to see the whole of that spectrum play itself out in an intentional way was a really exciting next step for me, because my work has always been with adolescents. And so I actually find some of my best moments thus far here have been going over to Brookside. And I will tell you, don't wear a skirt because you're going to spend your day on the floor. What you tend to be doing is learning about reading and letters and figuring out how to figure out a thing and a problem, hands-on with the kids. And the other thing that drew me to this opportunity was that Cranbrook is also different. Unlike many of what I would consider our national peers, your Exeters, your Andovers, your Deerfields, what have you, Cranbrook has resources that are really different than all of those schools. We have the entire community to draw upon, the Art Academy, the Science Institute, all of the history that lives in these buildings. I had the opportunity to go visit Smith House, the Frank Lloyd Wright House that has just come under wing, and to talk about what could we do there for kids. What about a course on architecture? What about a class or a lecture or a meeting that happens in this space? Not about this space, but in this space. And so when you I think about the opportunities that are available to a school with these particular resources, I think you have a very different set of opportunities moving forward. And that, for me, makes this really a different, more challenging, more interesting opportunity than I might have found at any number of other really interesting and really good schools. And so that's what I was seeking, as I felt like my good work at Bishop's was coming to a good close. I'd done some excellent work there, and what was going to keep me thriving and learning was going to be a new challenge like that. And so I'm thrilled to say I have found it. I will consider this year successful if I know where all the bathrooms are, and I'm slowly working on that. And if I can manage to find my way from one end of campus to the other without having to ask a kid for help. That's my other mark of success. But thus far, what I see is incredibly great teaching and a lot of opportunity. And that excites me very much.
Okay, so how would you describe your leadership skills? No one said this is going to be easy.
No, I don't like this. You know, it's funny, a question like that, I mean, everybody's got shelves of books about leadership. And what does it mean? I think it's about taking ownership. And it's two things. It's about relationship. And Don mentioned what my goals are for the year. My goals is to know my schoolhouse and to know the people who inhabit and love that schoolhouse every day. And that's the kids and the faculty, my colleagues. I also think that a great leader owns what's been given to them in every sense of that word. And so, you know, the schoolhouse is my house now. And how one walks into that every day with a sense of love and care, not just for the place, but for every soul that inhabits it, who goes through the journey that life has presented them. And the opportunity to walk with those kids and walk with those colleagues through whatever is presented to them, that's an onerous thing. And it's a stellar thing and a fortunate thing. And I think leadership is investing in that. So that good or bad, good or ill, you take ownership of what happens in that schoolhouse every day. And perhaps leadership as a school leader may be different than leadership in the corporate world. I don't know, I can't speak to that. But I do think it's about ownership. And I see that in the division heads that help to run each of those individual schoolhouses. They own them. And they are there on the weekends making sure that Monday we are ready for class. And they are walking the corridors at night in those dormitories in the upper school. And they are part of the living, breathing work of that school. And so for me, knowing that that's the leadership team I can rely on makes me feel more empowered to own the whole of it myself. And so that's just one way of thinking about it. But it's a way that gets me out of bed every day and allows me to walk into that place and say, you know, I know and love what happens here because it's my place.
Great answer. Thank you. So a question that came up at my table tonight was, what are your initial impressions of Cranbrook and its students? And what has surprised you about the Cranbrook campus?
The kids are great. I mean, the kids, hands down, whether they're the little, the middles, or the bigs, they are really kind to each other. I have to say, and and that's in off hours and on hours. You see it in the classroom when they engage and talk about. I popped my head into an English class the other day, and they were working on a poem, and the way they were both challenging but deferential to each other. They were a little like cars entering a superhighway. They allowed the next car to enter. They allowed the kid who clearly wanted to add something to add that thought. And I thought that's sort of an intellectual courtesy that we want to see young people have and take into the wider world. I'll also tell you, in just the general passings and goings, they say hello to you, they meet you eye to eye, they ask how you are, and they say thank you. And that is a beautiful thing, because it says that they care about each other. And it isn't just a courtesy. They understand that that's part of the fabric of making a place work. I have an advisee, Max, and he came in early, and there's snacks for the kids. And I said, "Oh, help yourself." And he said, "No, I'm going to wait for the others." And that's coming from a sophomore in high school, who I'm sure is hungry at 10 o'clock in the morning. But that is the way he lives his life, and that is the culture that's around him. I think what is, and it's a little surprising, but surprising in a good way. I think what you look for in a school is you look for a place where the student culture and the adult culture are as close together as they can be. I think when the kids are on a different planet than the adults, you have a much more difficult enterprise in front of you, particularly with the older kids and with the kids who really set that culture in the upper school. And what I see here is a place where kids talk to adults and they seek them out. What our students say to me is, "Oh yeah, I have my advisor. Oh yeah, no, I'm really close to my math teacher. Oh no, I would go to my coach if I really had an issue, if something I couldn't work out on my own." They all have an adult person in their life. And over time, for any young person anywhere, if you have an adult outside the family unit who can be a strength for you, you're going to make it. And you're going to make it in a much more successful way. And our kids are seeking that out, and they're finding that as part of their life. And so that's been a really beautiful and happy thing to see right out the gate, because sometimes it's hard to see. That doesn't reveal itself immediately often. The other piece that I notice in the teaching, and this is, again, a reason why I was attracted to this school, is the intentionality of the educators and their work. You can tell how much thought has gone into a lesson. Teachers are thinking very, very carefully about the choices they're making for those kids, whether it's a choice of text or textbook, or what is the problem we're going to take on today, what is the lab we're going to do. They have already thought through all of the consequences of that choice. And there's a real intentionality to that I see in the classrooms day in and day out. That is amazing. That is a gift in teaching, to have that orientation. It's very hard to teach. It's very hard to mentor in educators. And I think we have it in spades. And it's fabulous. And so I feel really good about what is happening in those classrooms every day because of the goodness of the kids and the intentionality of the educators. I will tell you, a big surprise is how big this campus is. Holy cannoli. Bishop's was 11 3/4 of an acre. I mean, you could literally hug that if you felt like it one day. And everybody eats in the same dining hall at the same time. If I wanted to find somebody to work on something, all I had to do was go to snack. We got 5 different snacks here, and 5 different lunches.
At least.
At least. And just figuring out who needs to be in the room at the same time is an utter conundrum for me. And so it takes 48 hours to get all those people together. And it's a very different rhythm of a place. And that nobody can tell you about. And they certainly don't tell you about that before you sign the contract. It is a huge surprise, particularly somebody who's coming in. I mean, Arliss grew up here as an educator, and so she knew the ways and means of this place.
Sure.
And so to come in, having lived my educational and professional life elsewhere with different ways, that's been probably the biggest surprise. And it's oddly logistic, but it impacts your life every day. But it's been great. People have been super patient and really caring about making sure to give me as much information to help on that journey as possible. So.
Thank you. So I'm glad you answered that question the way you did. I also mentioned at my table that our students are really great kids. And my wife Erin and I, on Saturday mornings, this is a little secret, we go to coffee shops and have a coffee and a bagel before we go up to the farmer's market. And we always bump into Cranbrook kids, either at Einstein's over at Maple and Telegraph, or at Brugger's here up at Long Lake and Woodward. And we often run into the football team at Brugger's, and we run into the lacrosse team and the soccer team at Maple and Telegraph. And the Cranbrook kids are, and they don't know who I am, which is a great thing, because I'm really dressed down, but they're so polite. And they open the door for you, they reference you as sir, which makes me feel old, but they're very polite and they're just good kids. And it's such a great feeling that these kids are part of this institution that has such a historic part of this community, and I feel so good about it. And Erin always mentions to me, she said, don't you feel good about that? And I said, no, I feel great about that. We have great kids here for the most part, and we're really very, very proud of them. So Aimeclaire, we have a really big, loyal group spanning many decades here of Cranbrook, and do you have any questions for them?
You know, it was funny, we had homecoming two weeks ago, week and a half ago. And it happened to pour down rain on Friday night. We had the football game under the lights. It was great. We honored Pete Dawkins, General Dawkins, for his amazing career and so many incarnations. And I had the opportunity to share an umbrella with a graduate from the class of 55. And we happened to be standing in the pouring rain right next to the kids section where no one had an umbrella. You know, they were being kids, doing cheers and singing music and stuff. And the gentleman who was standing next to me started to, like, dance along to the cheers. And I thought, that's part of the magic of this place. There's some sort of continuity there between these kids who, in most cases, will graduate in 2, 3, 4 years, and this gentleman. They don't have any idea what music they listen to, but there was something about the spirit of the moment. And so I think my question for you is all about that sense of continuity. You know, what, when you think back on your experience here, is such a precious commodity that you would have it live in the lives of kids today, and you would want to see it carried forward. And my guess is that that's not a program. My guess is it's not, you know, oh, we must teach Caesar. I would have us all learn Caesar, but that's just me. But it probably has something to do with something else, something bigger. And I don't know what that is. And I wish I could have bottled that moment and bottled that happy dance that gentleman was doing, because that captured it for me. Because he had some kinship with those kids. And they're going to be standing there 50 years from now doing a happy dance with whatever kids are in those stands. But what is it for you? And I think that's the wisdom I can glean best from now. Because there is something there, but how do you put it into words? And how do you capture it? And
So we have a microphone, and we're ready to take input. What?
Oh, there was a time before any of you were born. Cranbrook had a practice of hosting alums, presumably would be an alum and the spouse, for a weekend, or maybe even 2 or 3 days in midweek. And they would come and they would stay at this, I don't know what the facility was called, I didn't know then. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, does this ring a bell at all? Well, I guess that's my reason for talking. I thought that was a great program.
Thank you.
Just to bring people back and have them see what's going on here, because it's a magical place, and it's magical in ways that older grads like me would never have imagined without that kind of experience.
Thank you very much.
My wife is going to kill me when I ask this question. But just let me preface this. I took 4 years of Latin, if that gives me credit. But I'm surprised it hasn't been asked yet. Do you drink beer? I thought that was a standard question now for interviews.
Indeed, I do.
Do you like beer?
Indeed, I do.
I will give you a little secret. She is a hockey fan. So
Yeah, I'm a
I
hockey
imagine she
fan.
drinks beer, yes.
I think if you knew Pete Dawkins, probably some of the people in this room do know Pete. He was 2 years behind me. How he got to West Point, how he won that trophy, he basically says it's Cranbrook. He went to West Point because he had a faculty member, a coach, who said, you are an outstanding star, and I'm going to take you to a school, I'm going to get you into a school, which is going to take you, and when you get done with that school, you're going to be a pro. Pete didn't believe that. His mother tells the story that when he applied to come to Cranbrook, they lived around the corner from me in Royal Oak, they didn't have enough money. And she kept insisting and insisting and insisting, and they finally said, okay, we'll give him a scholarship. And the reason Pete went to West Point is because his coach put him in the car, drove to West Point. They didn't know he was coming. He hadn't applied. He hadn't filled out any forms. And by the time they got done, he was accepted at West Point. And I think that's the type of person that we all have seen in our experiences in the Cranbrook community.
Thank you very much. And we had dinner with Pete here, honoring him on homecoming weekend, just a week or so ago. And he stood up and said that the reason he got into Cranbrook on a scholarship is because the Cranbrook administrators wanted to get rid of his mother because she kept showing up. But of course, he also said that Cranbrook changed his life and turned his life around. And every time he was interviewed in town, and all the newspaper articles and the radio program he did on 760, he gave credit to Cranbrook at the very beginning and at the very end, saying without Cranbrook schools, he wouldn't be where he is today. And we thank Pete very much for that. So thank you very much for that comment.
In the interest of full disclosure, my father was the head of the scholarship committee at that point. And I vaguely recall some conversations surrounding Mr. Dawkins' appearance on the campus.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we have, yes.
Well, I was at the game 2 weeks ago, and I don't ever remember when I was here for 6 years, and I don't remember seeing and hearing the cheers that they gave out. They were all in unison. It was tremendous, and I got a little wet too. But the thing I noticed around here is everybody is so friendly and so respectful, and I, even now in a strange situation, always call somebody, especially older than me, sir.
Thank you.
I suppose this is more of a comment, but I think the one of the things that binds the different generations together is the traditions of the place, and I really want to emphasize the importance of some of the cheers, the things like the Christmas pageant, things like that. To maintain that sense of tradition and the things that span the different generations, those connections. I think it's a very important aspect of the place.
Thank you. And Christmas pageant is going to happen again this year. Charlie, how many years?
Well, it was enacted the very first year of the school, so we are closing in on 91, I believe.
91 years of Christmas pageant, and the songs and the pageant is very much the same.
We haven't heard from any of the Kingswood ladies, I would know.
Right
They're
here.
not generally shy or retiring.
Well, what I think you made a mention of is helping each other. And and that's one of the things that I felt here at when I was at Kingswood, is that my classmates, we were a team. We were helping each other, and I was competing against myself. So that camaraderie and helping, and then like with the Horizons program, helping others outside the school as well was very important. But I was trying to strive to do my best and helping other people to do their best, rather than seeing everybody as a competitor or an enemy.
Thank you very much for that, Lynn.
Thanks, Susan. I'm actually here with my dad, but I did graduate in 1977. The traditions, I'd like to build on that, such as the junior ring ceremony over at Kingswood. I think those kind of traditions give us a sense of continuity. And I also think just the fact that as a student in this community, you can explore and try and test out anything, and it's a safe place to do that. And you're encouraged. You don't have to be the best at everything, but you can try it, and you can sample and discover yourself. So I think those are two important aspects.
Thank you very much for that. Fred?
Do I stand? Oh, okay. You asked a very thoughtful question first. My two sons went to Cranbrook, and my two grandchildren go to Cranbrook. Part of it was just a coincidence of where I chose to live and where my son and daughter-in-law have chosen to live. But I obviously decided to send my sons here after I went here, and I was at least creatively neutral when my son and daughter-in-law looked at all the educational opportunities here in this area and chose Cranbrook. And now I have a second grader and a fourth grader, which is my real connection now with Cranbrook. It's through them, not through so much what I went through and what my sons went through, but the real important thing now to me is what are they going through and what kind of people is Cranbrook making? And I think the most important thing for me is the product that this educational process produces. The kids, what kind of people they are when they matriculate out of here, and what kind of people they are when they're here. And that's it for me. Obviously the architecture, really molded my artistic sensibility. There were a lot of things here that were important, but ultimately I liked the kind of kids that this institution produced. They were successful, independent, kind, and that's why I set my children here. That's why I'm, involved with my grandchildren who are here, and I think that's really it for me.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Any question you have for AC or for me on anything at Cranbrook? And then we'll...
Oh, God.
Hold on, Susie. Hold on. We don't all hear hardball.
I know there was a period here when there was some serious bullying issues in the middle school. This was a while ago. I don't know about today. How do you handle those issues?
Well, that is a very temporal question because October is actually Bullying Awareness Month. And part of what we're doing this month is targeting that as a very specific topic, actually in the middle schools in particular, because that's where the kids begin to do their social education I mean, you know from having elementary school kids, it's all about them and about their immediate world, and middle school really becomes all about them and the next kid over, that sort of thing. I think you have to have no tolerance for it, and I think you have to begin at creating a sense of empathy in the kids for someone who is beside you, for whoever is other than you, because you have to also have them understand that someday they're going to be other than the person they're next to. And it's that sense of reciprocity that I believe gets to the empathy and allows that to blossom in them, because they realize we all are in this together, and if you are mean today, it is going to come back, and it's going to come back in a way where someone's not going to be kind to you someday. And so I think emphasizing that, the social fabric that we all create together, is the way to get at it. And I would say we are working on that. You do it every day. And you do it with a lot of eyes on the kids. Middle school is not a time to understaff. And it is. It's having eyes on them and having the right ratios of teachers to the classroom, and teachers in the dining hall, and teachers in the hallways, and teachers in the locker rooms, so that they're always being watched, and that social interaction and that social fabric can be really worked on intentionally every moment of the day. It's way, way more about that than it is about actually math class, believe it or not, at that stage. Because if they don't learn it there, you can take your issues in high school and just put them under a magnifying glass. And that's really the key point, is taking that period seriously. I believe in the separation of the genders at that age group, having also done middle school as a co-ed experience, because it allows us to focus more intently, so that we take away a little of the static that gets between kids when you have both boys and girls in the same space, and you can be more intentional about those social issues at that point. It is a daily struggle, I have to tell you. I think the world in which young people grow up today is not a kind world at times. And so to many days, we're working against the tide of a social culture that would tell them it's okay to be, it's okay not to be kind. And we're having to do that. The other thing we do is we enlist the parents to help us. I was at the Middle School Mothers Council just last week, and I said, we have to be in this together. The kids are watching all of the adults around them and sucking in that as the model of adulthood. So how you and your spouse interact matters. How you fight with each other, how you disagree matters. If you gossip about your own girlfriends, they're going to pick that up and think that's okay. And I say that to the faculty. How we treat each other around that water cooler or in the faculty mailroom matters, because the kids, particularly at middle school, are watching all the time, and we are their examples of appropriate adult life and adult culture. If we bully and speak unkindly about our colleagues, they will pick it up, and they will think that's okay. And so it's kind of like two fronts. I think it's constant attention at the kid level and minding your own adult behavior at the adult level. But daily struggle.
So great question. Any last minute burning question from anyone?
It's a two-part question. Maybe too long. The answer may be too long. I don't understand. One, can Cranbrook be identified partisan-wise? And two, you talked about gender separation. Unfortunately, sometimes there's gender separation within an individual, and I wonder how you handle that.
I don't understand the first question.
Political partisanship?
So, political partisanship, we stay extraordinarily neutral on politics here.
So Cranbrook can't be identified one way or the other.
You will not see signs on our campus. We encourage our kids in the classroom, and Aimeclaire can chirp in here, to have conversations about what's going on in politics. I think that's very important for part of their education. But we do not support certain political parties. We do not invite speakers to come who are running for an office. And we try to stay extraordinarily neutral. But after an election, we celebrate our alums who are running for offices and their accomplishments. We think it's very important to celebrate our alums while staying politically neutral.
Yeah, I think the key is how do you engage as a citizen? And what are the great appropriate ways and exciting ways to engage as a citizen? And that's what we're trying to draw out of them, is their sense of civic engagement.
But their civic conversations in the classrooms are very important.
Yeah.
And those are open conversations. Those are not controlled conversations.
And what, he asked about the gender issue.
Yeah, our job is to walk the path with a child. And so, when you have the full spectrum of a child's growing up, from 3 years old to 18 years old, they're going to go through all sorts of moments of figuring out who they are. And for some kids, it is a question of gender identity. It is. And our job is to walk with them and their families through that process of discernment and to support that kid so that they can move on in a healthy way onto their next chapter. And so, yes, we have kids here who identify across the spectrum of gender, but our job is to be with them and their families in the course of that dialogue. Because we want kids, particularly adolescents, to grow up in a safe and healthy way. When you are unable to have a conversation with a kid about a really sensitive topic like gender identity, what you tend to do is drive them into isolation, which statistics would tell you the majority of those kids then turn to self-harm and dangerous behaviors. That is something we do not want to happen. We want to have them be in a space where they feel comfortable talking with adults about what they're struggling with. And that's the posture we take.
To do that, you'd have to put a lid on bullying. Can you do that?
Well, hopefully we're doing both at the same time.
Yes.
Is what I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
you can't have a school where a child who gets marginalized by wherever they are in their own process of growing up.
And remarkably, our kids are really good about this.
Yeah.
I'm nosy enough that I came tonight because I wanted to hear the new director school. But I
happen to go to Christ Church, and there's some people in this room who do, and there are a lot of faculty people who go to Christ Church. And I've got a son who teaches in one of the schools. And every time I've asked one of these faculty people for the last 3 months, tell me about the new director of school, or the new boss. And every one of them has told me how impressed they are. And what I asked them, well, what are you so impressed about? Well, 2 things come to mind. Number 1, she talks to the faculty and she talks to the students. And she asks questions. And she wants to learn. And my son told me that she came to a faculty meeting in the middle school and she talked for 45 minutes. And then she actually sat down for 2.5 hours and listened to the faculty of the middle school talk to her, ask her questions, and give her their 2 cents. And boy, what I've heard tonight, we got a great person right there.
Thank you very much. And so that wraps up our evening. This is the very beginning of your relationship with AC. It was a plan to get you a chance to spend some time with her, listen to her, get her views, ask her questions. I can't tell you how happy we are here at Cranbrook that you're here with us. And if there's anything else that we can do for you, please feel free to reach out to either AC or to me directly. I always love hearing from our alums. Anything that we can do, we'd be happy to try to do for you. So thanks so much for tonight. Thank you. We have a gift for you. When you walk out the door, there's a special gift for you as you leave. So thank you very much. Thank you. Great job.
Well done, my friend. Our pleasure. I think I've known that a long